Welcome to the Beacon Hill Podcast, helping you grow in your faith and shine for Christ. Thanks for joining us. Now here are your hosts, Pastor G.J. Farmer and the Beacon Hill Baptist Church staff.
Well, hey everyone. Welcome to the Beacon Hill Podcast. I'm Joel Betts. We got Jake Edwards. Say hi.
Hi.
Josh Cesaro.
Good morning.
Giving away the time here.
Hi.
You know, we're actually recording this at 3 in the morning, so it's good. No, but we're glad that you've joined us today. Hope that you're having a great summer so far. How's your summer been, boys?
It's been good.
Busy.
Yeah. Summer's always crazy, especially, you know, at church with you just got back from kids camp. How was that?
Kids camp was awesome. Centric Kid. It was awesome time. It was extremely hot, but I'm still recovering.
Yeah. Well, how many hours of sleep a night do you think you got?
Between 5 and 6.
It's not too bad for
So,
camp. Not
yeah.
too bad for camp.
That's a lot lower than your normal, like 13, right?
Right. But
Yeah.
you got to throw in the fact that when you're sleeping on one of the beds,
Yeah.
the little dorm
True.
beds, and that kind of throws it a little bit more of
Yeah.
It's a young man's
uncomfortability.
game.
Yeah. And you just got back from vacation not that long ago.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, went to New Mexico, to Alto, New Mexico.
What's your review of New Mexico?
I liked it. I liked we were in the mountains, so it was like 70 degrees, which is awesome. But the drive leading up to it, like we flew into El Paso and then we drove through the southern part, and that was flat and brown and ugly. So I wouldn't have gone there for vacation again, but I would go where we went again.
Dang.
Yeah.
It's God's creation.
That's good.
Okay.
Went golfing, wild horses on the golf course.
Yeah.
I thought that was just in Garth Brooks' songs.
They couldn't
that they
drag
had
you away,
wild
could
horses. They couldn't. But
I'm-
they were just chilling on the fairway. It was awesome.
I'd be scared to hit one. You're a better golfer than me. I would be scared to hit a horse.
Dude, the balls just like whiz past them, and they're just kind of like,
They
what
wouldn't
was
even
that?
care. You
And
hit it,
they
and
just
they'd
keep
be like,
going.
"Geez, Joel, come
Yeah.
on."
I'm
fairway's
used to
over here.
beating a dead horse, but never ones that are alive.
Never alive with
That's
the ball.
crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you guys are having a good summer. We wanted to just throw out there real quick. What is like a favorite summer activity for you guys?
Oh man.
Not all at once, though.
Favorite summer activity. I got memories. You know,
Yeah.
we used to go on. We had a kind of a sorrow family, like my dad's extended side of a beach vacation somewhere during the week. We haven't done it in probably the last 4 or 5 years since COVID. But that used to be my favorite, probably summer activity. You know, in ministry, we're so, especially I've been a student ministry most of my life, and you know, it's summer is busy.
Yeah.
You know, so
What
it's
beach are we talking most of the time?
we would go to different ones. My uncle would always be in charge of finding it, so we would go to different ones. But, you know, Myrtle Beach.
Kokomo.
Yeah. Anything, you know, Jacksonville, Daytona Beach, Panama City, those kinds.
Nice.
Lower, but
You rotated.
yeah,
I know
he-
some
he
people
did.
like have one beach and they're, you know, dedicated
This is
to
my
that
spot.
beach. Yeah.
It was Myrtle Beach for like when I was in high school and a long time. It was always somewhere in Myrtle Beach.
Nice.
But
Nice. How about you, Jake?
I like to golf.
you do?
Summer, winter.
It's also
yeah,
your
that's
favorite
a
winter, fall, and spring.
any
It's-
activity.
It's
yeah,
your all
favorite
season activity.
all the time.
Yeah.
But it's hotter during
Yeah.
the summer.
It is.
A lot of people don't know that, but it's still fun. So
That's true. That's
I don't
true.
know. And then other like, I probably have to say something like, "Oh, hang out with my family" or whatever. You know what I mean? But like, the golf course really is the
Man,
thing. You know, I'm gonna
You're-
be honest.
Yeah.
you're in trouble as soon as your family listens
Yeah.
to this episode.
They listen every week,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially Lila.
Well, one of my favorite memories is going out on the lake. And sometimes people will invite me out on the lake. If you have a boat and you want to invite me out on the lake and you're afraid I won't say yes, I'll tell you right now, I'll say yes. So
don't feel that rejection.
Yeah, don't be scared. But I like going out. My grandparents had a boat growing up, and they would always take us out on the lake to swim or to water ski or to tube and stuff. And that's always a good memory, always good.
I like how... Sorry, I like how you're like, the reason why I haven't been invited places is because people are afraid to ask me.
Yeah, I give out maybe a vibe of like, oh, I'm too busy or
he's
too
got
cool,
a lot going.
this kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah,
this is a sociable guy right here. Okay,
Yeah.
Don't be afraid
Don't
to
be
ask
afraid.
Joel.
That's right. I'm here. I'm ready for a good trip out on the boat. But today, actually, we're talking about a bad trip on the boat, a bad trip out on the lake, believe it or not. So if you joined us on Sunday, or maybe you didn't, we were in Luke 8, and we're kind of honing in on the story from verses 22 through 25. So I'll go ahead and read that. And it says, one day, talking about Jesus, he and his disciples got into a boat, and he told them, let's go cross over to the other side of the lake. And so they set out, and as they were sailing, he fell asleep. Then a fierce windstorm came down on the lake, and they were being swamped and were in danger. They came and woke him up, saying, Master, Master, we're going to die. Then he got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waves. So they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said to them, where is your faith? They were fearful and amazed, asking one another, who is this then? He commands even the winds and the waves, and they obey him. So we came and talked on Sunday about this theme of where is your faith? Where is your faith? Jesus was asking the disciples in the middle of the storm as they were freaking out, and as the storm hit them and the waves crashed, this idea of, they didn't really have faith that they were going to be okay because Jesus was there. And so kind of the big idea I think we can take away from the sermon is that storms don't just test our faith, but they reveal our faith. They reveal our faith. Have you ever had a moment in your life, Josh, where life threw you something unexpected and it really revealed where your faith was at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also doing number 2, but also, I think every Christian's had those moments. I mean, I've had certainly. You think about health-wise, or maybe loss of job or whatever, and those kind of things where you can't see the future. Where like you don't understand, why this is happening. Are challenging to us because, us here on earth, I mean, even the disciples were in the boat with Jesus and their faith was still shook in the moment. And we get so caught up in our circumstances that we forget to actually, focus on God. I think if we focus more on Him, we've had things in life that shake your faith or show us how strong our faith really was. We can look back on those, the times that God pulled us through. But yeah, I've had moments in our life where you've had something that just kind of shook you to your core. Whether it's health of somebody or yourself or loss of a loved one or anyway, that really causes us because of the fall to just kind of reveal something about where we place our faith in. Do we place it in these circumstances, which is temporary, or in God, which is eternal? So,
yeah, I mean, sometimes these things just come out of nowhere, right? But we shouldn't be surprised. The Bible talks about, and Peter often talks about, we shouldn't be surprised when trials and temptations come our way. But God uses them for His glory in a purpose, right? And they really reveal in those times where we're truly standing on, like this idea of our foundation, where our faith is. What do you guys think are some common things people rely on instead of Jesus when these storms or life gets hard?
Well, people do so many things to try to avoid coming to God sometimes in these situations. We saw in the boat, what did the disciples do first? They were trying to rely on themselves, as opposed to going first to God in their situations. Other people, sometimes they put their faith in, other people or relationships, and they forget Jesus. They say, oh, this person can help me through it. In reality, people on earth will always let us down, or they can't let us down. God's the one that will never let us down, or they have some kind of security, whether it's money or their job or anything. And then even in our culture, just these kind of distractions where people try to lose themselves, and whether it's alcohol or their work or drugs or something else that's illicit, is the same thing that the disciples were doing, where Jesus wants us to kind of move from fear in our situation to having faith in Him in the situation. Not putting our faith in anything on this earth that can get us through the storms, but sometimes it's just Him. Sometimes you can get to the point where you're just like, well, I can't do anything about this except turn to God. So,
yeah. You have anything to add to that?
No, about the things that I thought of were similar. Like, I think some people can rely on like their financial stability. A lot of times, the Bible talks about it being harder for a rich man to come to Jesus because you don't perceive yourself being in need of anything, and so that can be a crutch that people rely on. Or sometimes it's just like your own determination or pride, or people just say like, well, I'm just going to get through this, and they think that I think you said that, like, rely on themselves, and it's like, I'm tough, I can get through anything, and that sort of stuff. So
yeah, I can think times in my life, even though I've trusted in Jesus, I've also found myself in my heart having this thought of like, well, if I were to just get that promotion, or if I was just to achieve this in my life, man, things would really be a lot easier, or I'll pretty much be set up for life. And I think when we have these trials and things that come in, they can really remind us, no matter what we think in life, a checkpoint or something that we can stand on, a number in our bank account or whatever, we know that a storm could come in and that could be, taken away in an instant, no matter what that thing is. And we need to be reminded that the only place to stand on, the only truly reliable, never-ending thing is our faith in Jesus. And that can get us through any hard storm. But kind of seeing that dichotomy that we're talking about of like people that they believe in Jesus and they have faith, but they don't trust Jesus fully. We don't have that full faith. Why do you think this is possible? Or why do you think that happens, that we can have faith and trust in Jesus, but not fully, like the disciples didn't fully trust Jesus?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because they were physically with Jesus, and they knew who He was, and they believed He was who He said He was, and it was still difficult for them. And I think for us, the Bible talks about us seeing that our sight towards Jesus, towards God, is dimly lit. Like we don't see fully because we're here on this earth, and we are in this body that is imperfect. And so I think it depends on what your definition of close is. I don't think we'll ever be so close to Him that we will just never lack faith in certain situations. So, for anybody out there who may beat themselves up over that, like, it's something that we all struggle with. But I think that's one of the reasons why it can be difficult, is just because we don't see him, we don't know him fully, and so it's hard to have faith in him fully the way we will eventually when we see him again. But that's something that we can always improve on. And so these situations that God sends our way are opportunities for us to grow in our faith. And it's kind of one of those, like, you can go either way. Like, you can either lose faith and not believe that he'll take care of you, or you can use it as an opportunity to grow. And I think that's kind of Jesus's point with the disciples, is that he's just challenging them to grow in that.
Yeah, I think we see this idea. I think that's a good point of just Jesus's relationship with the disciples. I mean, we know at this point they don't have the Holy Spirit, but even still, we see this idea of, it's not that the disciples have zero faith. It's not that they are like unbelievers or that they don't love and know Jesus, but we see that their faith's not complete, right? We see, other places in the gospel, the disciples try and heal, or they try and cast out demons, and one of Jesus's response is, your faith is not big enough, or he tells another man, like, your faith is small, and the man's response is, I believe, help my unbelief, right? And I think this idea of, we can have faith, but we're always growing until the day that, Christ returns and our faith will be made complete, right? Our faith will be made sight.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was thinking, like, when I read the story again, like, all these times that Jesus was doing this to the disciples, about their faith, questioning their faith, I think he was just preparing them, for when he leaves, Holy Spirit comes, because he knew that, 11 out of them, including Judas, but, that they were all going to die for him. They're all going to be tortured. And, that takes a lot of faith, to have faith in someone that's not even here. You're preaching the gospel, and you're going to die for it. You're going to die for your belief in this man. And to me, it's just a reminder, that Jesus was constantly training them, constantly discipling them. So,
yeah. I mean, we're all growing, and that's why we train together, and in small groups, and through the word being preached, and other ways in worship together, is we're all taking steps towards Jesus. And that's a good reminder. And we see it's not a bad thing to really question where our faith is at, right? And Jesus' question in verse 25, after they go to him, and we see that Jesus goes, and all he has to say is a word, and the waves calm down, which is just amazing, the power of Jesus. And then he asks them that question, where is your faith? Where is your faith? And that's a good question for us to ask sometimes in life. When things get hard, ask ourselves, where is our faith? And I think a helpful thing to do is to, when we ask where our faith is to remember the past, right? And then, how do you think, Josh, remembering past faith moments where God was faithful to you can help someone that's in the midst of the storm?
Yeah. First, it reminds us of God's faithfulness. We can look back on the times in our lives where we've had storms and didn't know how we're going to handle them, but we see that God got us through them. We can show people, we can tell people, point to areas in our own life. It's, it's a good remembrance, something I know my wife likes to do, and I do sometimes, have a verse for that time where you can go back to that verse and remember. Something will jog your memory about what, God did for you in the past. And I think that's what Jesus was emphasizing here was, when did he ask them, where is your faith? He did it right after he performed the miracle, for them. And so past victories sometimes and that can remind us that whatever we're going through, the storm or the trial is, temporary. Okay, it's temporary. We're putting our focus on something that's temporary, where God is eternal and He is the constant, in our life. It should be, and it should help us kind of shift our focus, of the temporary, whatever we're going through, to the eternal, and who is the constant, who is always there for us no matter what. So
yeah, I mean, I think exactly like you said, perspective is such a powerful thing of remembering, and it just puts where we're at in perspective. And also, I think not only remembering times that God was faithful helps us to get through it, but even in the midst of it, it helps us to have peace right there, right? We see in the midst of the disciples' fear and chaos, where is the peace? Jesus right there is calm and peaceful, and He's right there for us too, right? We have access to that peace through Jesus by going to Him, and He gives us peace in those moments. That song, that Christian song, Praising You in the Storm, right? There is peace to be found in just worship and surrender. We may not have clarity, or the situation might not be resolved right then and there, but we can have peace as we navigate it.
I want to sing that so bad.
I'll do it. We'll get copyright struck. I'll do it.
I was waiting for you to bust out the lyrics. So.
I was like holding back.
Well, Jake, instead of singing, why don't you answer this question?
Okay.
Jesus could have lectured them in this moment and told them exactly who He is and everything, but instead He asked them the question. Why do you think He asked, "Where is your faith?" instead of just giving them the answer?
Well, so I think that Jesus does this a lot throughout His time in His ministry, where he engages people, and I think that it's one of those things where as people we just tend to learn so much better, and when we are in dialogue with people. And so like you said, if He had just said, this big long speech about who He is and what He's doing and all those things, the disciples might think okay, that you've said that before. I know that. I agree with you, But when He asks these questions, and when He asks, where is your faith? It's a time for them to actually think about okay, here's how I just acted in this situation. He's challenging me in my faith. So what does that mean for where I need to be and where I am currently? And it's just, to me, it's just such a more powerful teaching tool to allow that back and forth, and just having them actually engage their minds and what actually happened and relate it to themselves, versus just I know with me and my kids, sometimes I do this just to punish them, because my dad used to do this for me, but I can just sit down and give them a 30-minute lecture, and they'll gloss over and not, be like, I get it and whatever. But when we're actually able to, I ask them questions, hey, why do you think that wouldn't be okay, that you would do that? You can just see on their faces they're just learning so much better. And I think that Jesus obviously knew that about the disciples and with the people He talked to, and I think He wanted them to. It was more important for Him that they get it than it was for Him to just prove Himself right.
Yeah. I think it is a valuable thing, exactly like you said, and I think it's something that we kind of miss sometimes, where we can sit down and read the Bible, or sometimes we can listen to a teaching time or a sermon and go on and miss the important part of meditating, this idea of just sitting with a truth from God and wondering, how does it affect my heart? What is my response? This idea of, we're to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, of just asking ourselves the question, what does God's word have for my heart? Instead of just saying, all right, there it is, and we got through that, and now I need to continue doing what I'm doing, or I've got this in my schedule or that. But just taking the time in our life to say, how is this growing my faith? How do I need to respond to this, right? And it's this idea that the sermon ended on of, a storm-proof faith is a growing faith. This idea of growing in our faith, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen all at once, but it is a process. I feel like our church, and this has been a theme a lot for our church here lately, and talking about what's our next steps. How are we growing closer to God? Mm-hmm. Recently at camp I took our students to, it was a big theme that God used there of progress over perfect. And we're all not going to be perfect till we're with the perfect one in Jesus. But until then, how are we growing? And this was a growing moment for the disciples. And Josh, when we think about, sometimes in faith, we feel like maybe we're going backwards in our Christian walk, or we've quit growing if we stalled out. Mm-hmm. If for a person like that who maybe feels that way, that they've maybe, reverted or are on the wrong path in their faith, what are some helpful ways to start moving back towards Jesus?
Yeah, for me first, when that's happened, we're all on this path of sanctification. Really, we know that it's not always going to be, mountaintops, and there's plenty of valleys, and we know that there's points in our lives where we are like just in it, man. We're in the deep end with God, and then there's some times where we're struggling in shallow, little inch deep in discipleship, and a lot of things can affect that. It could be a trial or tribulation or something we're going through, or it could just be us. And if it is us, we have to remember, growing in your faith. It's like anything else. If Jake or you're playing golf, you want to be good at golf or whatever. It could be a sport or whatever. You're going to have to pick up and practice and train and stretch those. You're going to lay around on the couch all day and not do anything active, and you want to be an athlete. Your body's not going to respond to that. You have to grow. It's a skill. It's a muscle.
That's what I've been doing wrong.
It's the fact that your brain, you grow in something when you stretch yourself. And, for me, it's getting back in the Word. It's very easy, and I can always speak for myself on the times when I've had that I'm like, why? What is going on, in my faith? And then I turn around and I'm like, oh, I haven't been in the Word in a month, or I'm not worshiping. I'm just going to church trying to check off a box, where it's legalistic. And that's just for me, period, is I don't really ever have to question like, man, what is going on with my faith? Why am I not growing? Why am I stalled out? I can usually point to something, and it usually has to do with, my personal walk. Like, hey, when's the last time you spent some time in prayer? When's the last time you spent some time really meditating on, God's promises and stuff? So
yeah, I think that's a good word, and I would add on to it of doing that while walking with others is so important too. To think about, talking about maybe being in the Word. If you liken that to like going to the gym, you might be able to go to the gym by yourself for a fair amount of time. And, there's others around you, like coming to church. There's people in church, but, you go in, get on the treadmill by yourself and then go. You might be able to sustain that for a season. The times that I found I'm most consistent is when I'm going with other people, or I have a trainer that's checking up on my progress, or friends that are saying, I'll just confess, I've been out of the gym because of our crazy summer, and I've had a friend that said, hey man, I haven't seen your progress report in the gym. When are you getting back in there? And so I'm going to get back in there. I've stalled out on that. And Probably if that friend hadn't texted me, I would have not been back in a long time. But
It's gonna be like, you're looking kind of mushy, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what's
Man,
going
what's
on?
going on
in
with
the
that
same way
friend?
with our faith, we can read the word and pray on our own, and of course, but it's so important for us to be walking with other people that are praying for us. People are saying, hey, what's going on in your life? How are you? Or, what's God been teaching you lately? People are just so important. We're not in this alone and growing. There's a reason that we gather together. One, because God says it's good to be with the body, and two, we need each other. He's made us for one another. And I think that's so important as we grow in our faith. And I want you to know, if you're going through a trial, a storm in your life, don't go through it alone. That if you need prayer, contact us. We would love to walk with you and encourage you in the season and reach out. And I also want you to know that really the true way to get through a storm is knowing Jesus, loving Jesus, the fact that he loves you and he died on the cross for your sin. And if you believe and trust in him and repent of your sin, this peace that he offers is yours to have. And we would love to talk to you and encourage you if you want to know more about that. But thankful that you joined us in this time. It's been good talking to you boys. And hey, invite us all out on the boat. We're ready. Let's get out on the lake. We promise it'll be a better trip.
Somebody
than the
Sunday
disciples.
can come ask Joel to come out on the boat.
That's right.
Joel isn't too cool or too big a celebrity.
No.
Just go right up to him and ask
I
him.
know.
Maybe-
When I first got here, people were inviting me on the boat, and I think they've gotten a little intimidated
Yeah.
the more they know
They're
me.
like, golly, this guy's got it going on.
Yeah,
man. He don't want
but
me out there.
Let's just tear that down. So thanks for joining us today. We hope to see you. If you don't have a church family, we'd love for you to worship with us 10:30 this Sunday, or maybe you've stalled out a little bit in the summer. Come on back. We've got a great time of worship. It's going to be good.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. So thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Beacon Hill Podcast. For more information about Beacon Hill Baptist Church, visit beaconhillbaptist.com.